Hello, not only am I using my tiny microphone because my clip-on microphone is having problems today, but I am starting a new playlist, and this is for teaching psychological statistics. And anything in this playlist is meant for people who have never had a social statistics or a psychological statistics class before. It probably won't be much help for people taking advanced statistics. So starting off, what the heck are statistics? I mean, we hear that term and we think, oh, well, I know statistics. Like if somebody talks about a sports team and they give some numbers to indicate their performance, those are statistics. Or you might have a survey that's reported about in the news and they say, this percent of people believe this one thing. And you say, well, those are statistics. Yes, those are examples of statistics. Many other things can be considered statistics. And so to tell you what statistics are, we have to back up a little bit and define some other terms that are going to be included in the definition of statistics. So first, let's talk about populations and samples. And if you're a psychology major, you might have heard these in other classes too. But a population, let's say you want to do some research, you want to do a study, you want to get some information. The group of individuals, they could be animal, they could be people, because in social sciences like psychology, we also do some animal research. I might slip up sometimes and just say people, but individuals, all the individuals that are relevant to your particular study, your topic, that's your population. That's everybody that this is relevant to. So let's say you were interested in people diagnosed with ADHD. Maybe you want to look at something like test anxiety and people with ADHD. You want to look at those two variables, having an ADHD diagnosis and risk for test anxiety, let's say. All right, so that means everybody everywhere who's been diagnosed with ADHD, that's your population. In many cases, we're not going to be able to test, to measure, to interview, to question the entire population. So we often actually work with a sample. Now, a sample is a subset of the population. It's usually the people who are involved in a particular study. And with a sample, it is meant to represent the population. You hope you have a nice representative sample that allows you to make estimates about the characteristics of the population. So we make our estimates based on numbers. All right, so we also have to define the difference between a parameter and a statistic. Oh, we've used that word statistic. We're getting close to defining statistics. All right, so a parameter is a measurement that tells you something about the population. So it's a measurement, a numerical value that describes or summarizes something about the population. Now, if you are dealing with the sample, you're making measurements on a sample, hoping to get estimates of the population. Those measurements, those numerical values that tell you something about the sample, those are statistics. Statistics are numerical values describing or summarizing a sample, and they often have the goal of estimating a larger population, estimating the characteristics, the patterns that you see in that larger population. Now, additional information about parameters and statistics, and depending on your class, remember I'm making these for my classes, you may not need to know this information, but sometimes it's relevant to know that you have different abbreviations for parameters versus statistics. There's this tradition that if you're dealing with a parameter, that you use a Greek symbol. For example, the mean, and if you don't know that term, that's an indicator of the average or typical score. That's a very oversimplified definition. Later, when I talk about central tendency, I'll give you more detail. But the mean for a population, that is presented with this Greek symbol mu. All right, and so the mu, that Greek symbol, that tells you the population mean or the parameter for the population. Now, for the statistic for the sample, there's also a mean for a sample. And so the mean for a sample, like many non-parameter measurements and many statistical measurements are non-Greek abbreviations. So you use Latin letters, and Latin, just the alphabetic letters that we use, in English-speaking countries like the United States, where I'm teaching. And so there are various ways that you might see the mean for a sample abbreviated. Sometimes they use a capital M. Sometimes they use a letter like X or Y, because sometimes a set of data might be abbreviated as X, like X is the scores. And then you might have a second set that they call Y. And so the mean for X, the mean for that set of data, they might put a capital M with a little tiny X next to it, or they might put capital X with a bar over the top. X with a bar over the top is also the abbreviation for the mean for the sample. And so if you see a Greek letter abbreviation with some number, that's probably a parameter describing a population. If you see a non-Greek abbreviation, that's probably a statistic that's telling you about the sample. And for those needing to learn APA, American Psychological Association formatting, usually your Greek abbreviations are not italicized, or they don't have to be italicized. The non-Greek abbreviations are typically italicized. And sometimes students ask me why. I'm not entirely sure. It's just something that's good to know if you're going to have to be writing up, say, a results section in APA format. All right. That is the first video in the Teaching Psychological Statistics playlist. More to come as I get the chance to make them.